Hey guys, Peter here to tell you about the latest from Massacre, Resurgence out October 22nd on Nuclear Blast. This album has 10 tracks, 40 minutes in length, and this is the band's 4th full-length studio album. They are an American death metal band. A band that I discovered in the early 90s, and it's nice to see that they're still releasing new material today. Now the songs and the album itself, it's really about the collective. I didn't feel like this was a record that offered me singles or songs that stand out in the crowd, different from everything that came before and different from everything that comes after. This is a very linear sounding record. It has fluidity, it has movement. The movement is almost seamless because there's a lot of similarities as far as song construction and even execution and the way the elements come together. So because of that, even though it's 40 minutes in length, it doesn't feel like 40 minutes because it flies by. So it has the movement, it has power, it moves well across the tracks. But at the same time, when you look back at it, it's really hard to distinguish some key points within the record itself. It's all about the collective, not about necessarily having cornerstones throughout that become perhaps the calling cards of the album. The album itself, it's its own calling card. It doesn't have songs that do that for it. The album does it for itself. Once you look at the soundscape of this record, this is a thumping album, but at the same time, it feels so fresh. I really like the fact that they didn't change their DNA. They are who they are, and this album doesn't reinvent the wheel as far as sound or structure is concerned. The sound is thumping, like I said. It has big volume, large footprint. It doesn't flat out, it's big with every single song. And I really felt like it was big because of the way the drums sound and how they interact with the guitars. And the guitars themselves have a lot of volume as well. So you look at the drums and you feel the warmth, the depth that they give to these tracks. They really expand the footprint of the songs. They ground the album, they create heaviness, they create power, they become the motor that really transports the listener, not just across the tracks, but from song to song. Add on top of that the guitars doing pretty much the same thing, but with different elements or with different execution. Sometimes a little bit more driven, sometimes a little bit more chunky, sometimes a little bit more groovy, but always with power, always with thickness, with that traditional Florida DNA riffing as far as death metal is concerned. You're going to see that across all 10 tracks, and that becomes a little bit of the glue that holds the whole soundscape together. But this album, as far as sound goes, what stays with the listener is how big, how powerful, how heavy, and how much depth it has. You can almost feel it when you're listening to it. On top of it all, you have Cam Lee on vocals, and he is consistent. That's the word. This album is consistent from a structural perspective. There's consistency in the sound, in the execution of that sound, and how it feels and how it comes across. And then you're also going to get consistency from the vocals from top to bottom. There's not a lot of variations or almost any variations at all. Cam Lee comes in with his style, with his approach, and he brings that final touch that adds that extra layer of heaviness, that extra layer of aggression on top of an album that musically is already very heavy and very aggressive. I enjoyed this album. I really like the fact that they kept that DNA intact. They didn't try to reinvent themselves for a new generation. This is a band that's been doing this sound, this approach for a very long time. They kept it alive, they kept it well, and now they're perhaps introducing themselves to a new generation. I like the fact the album keeps that sort of old school feel there, but at the same time it still sounds fresh. It doesn't sound dated, and I think that's an important element for this album. I felt that the record needed a little bit of something in between, maybe having a few more intros leading up into the songs, maybe an interlude in the middle of the record. There was something that was needed in order to break the routine of the album, because after one or two times going through it, there is a sense of being there before, and there's not a lot for the listener to rediscover with every single time that you go back to it. As far as brutality and heaviness, that stays consistent. So if you're just looking for that, the album is going to offer to you. If you're looking for something else, or if you're looking to dive a little bit deeper, this album really stays at the surface. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Eldritch Prophecy. This is the opener of the album, and I really liked it because it had also a built-in intro that allows you to ease yourself into the record, into the overall experience. It has a dark, methodic riff that sets the tone, and then the song starts to move. It starts to grow. It becomes heavy, sound-wise and vocally. It's a track that just, once it gets into its gear, once it gets into its movement, it's going to be very hard to stop it. It just really plows through it. The solo breaks a little bit away from that heaviness and gives the listener a little bit of a sense of a break, or at least allows you to catch your breath before the song comes back again and becomes that bulldozer that never stops, that just plows you at every single movement. I also like the fact that the track finishes off in the same methodic, dark, atmospheric sound that it started off with, so it allows the track to go full circle. As it starts, as it finishes, in the middle is just power and heaviness. Next, you have The Whisper in the Darkness, a track that has purpose. It has a sense of going somewhere. It wants to take you there, and it's not going to stop along the way. It's just going to keep you moving. It has heaviness. It has power. The drums are absolutely killer on this track. They really stand out. While in the previous song, they were really connected with the guitars, and it's hard to see them working separate from one another. In this track, I felt like they were working together, but in different lanes, not necessarily bundled up as one. This makes the song a little bit more dynamic. It makes the song a little bit more engaging. The guitars have more of the role of driving the experience, while the drums are creating the bass line and the heaviness, that power, that foundation that the track really needs. The chorus vocally is a little bit more controlled. It offers a little bit more calm. It's not as volatile as the verses are. Musically, there's also a few changes that are happening. This allows the track to have a few resets along the way, and those resets allow everything that comes after to feel even heavier than how it was before. Last but not least, Fate of the Elder Gods. The opening bass line on this track is killer. I love it. It sets a different kind of mood. It sets a different kind of atmosphere for a song like this. The solo is the perfect segue and allows you to ease into the rest of the track. This track really has two speeds in one weight, so it moves at two different not in two different directions. It moves in the same direction, but it moves in two different speeds. But regardless of which speed you're moving in, the heaviness of the track stays absolutely unhinged. It's the same heaviness regardless of how it moves, and I really like that aspect because it allows the song to be a little bit volatile, but at the same time to feel very controlled, to feel very together. So it's a nice little caveat that makes the song feel almost like it has ebbs and flows, even though it doesn't necessarily have them. It just changes ever so slightly between positions, between those movements, keeping the heaviness together, allowing the song to still feel as one. Very continuous track. The chorus vocally is very catchy. Perhaps the catchiest chorus on the album is on this song. That kind of set the tone a little bit different for how the track feels, but overall it's all about that movement and all about the consistency of heaviness that the track has to offer. This is it, Massacre with Resurgence, out on October 22nd on Nuclear Blast. Let me know your thoughts on this band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.